Alright, so I'm joined by Richard Buxton. Today's a freelance journalist, been covering Everton for a few years now. Richard, thanks for joining us on a Saturday morning on GrandOldTeam TV.
No problem, Adam. Good to be here.
How are you doing, mate? You okay?
Yeah, very good, very good.
That's good. Obviously, we've had a little bit of a break now because of the internationals, and we're going to have to wait till Monday night until Everton actually kick off again. I tell you what, let's start with the transfer window, Richard, shall we? Because obviously that ended in a little bit of chaos, shall we say, and there was a little bit of hysteria from Evertonians, a bit of hysteria around the window. What were your thoughts on that? Do you think some of the hysteria was warranted? Should Evertonians be worried? What were your just general thoughts on the window?
I don't know if worried is the word to use. I think there was obviously a lot of hysteria, a lot of anger at the way things played out on deadline day. But I mean, I think you have to look at the deals in question. I mean, yes, there was frustration over Lucas Perez losing him to Arsenal, Gabbiadini not coming, the Witzel deal, which seems to be dead in the water by about mid-June after being so close, never materialised. He obviously was on the brink of going to Juventus, that never happened. And obviously the Musa Sissoko case, which I think we'll probably talk about in quite a lot of detail, because obviously the way it played out is quite surreal. You can understand why the fan base is frustrated by the way it played out, because there were so many deals that were promised, so many deals that looked like they were going to be over the line, and then you look at where Everton actually ended up in the window. They ended up quite light at certain areas. I think striker was a big dearth of options. You got Valencia in as supplementing Romelu Lukaku, and as a definitive striker, that's probably not enough, because the other ones, you don't like to disparage any players, but I think
you can do, mate. You're more than welcome to say what you want.
Well, I'm just trying to think about how to be. I'm trying to think how to be polite without being too harsh on them, because I think Aruna Kone probably does have some merits to bring to the table. Umani I just don't think there's any at all, and I think I'd probably be wasting air time by doing so. So I think light in that department, the goalkeeping area is obviously still an issue. We obviously saw what Stekelenburg can do, and he's done well. But the issue is if you end up having a situation we had a few years ago with Tim Howe getting injured and having Joe Robo as your only backup, it's not really encouraging in terms of a team that wants to be challenging for Europe, that you're left with a 30-odd-year-old goalkeeper as your first choice, and someone who's in his mid-20s who's not really up to standard to what Everton needs. So, all in all, I think it's probably a poor end to the window, but I think there were some good signings in there.
Yeah, so Williams, Balassi, etc. Do you think that's what it was then, Richard, in your opinion? Was it the fact that Everton were linked with so many players, and this is a new phenomenon for a lot of Evertonians that we're seeing our club linked with big players and players who in the past we probably wouldn't have been linked with, and then all of a sudden, we've had Farhad Moshiri, all the stuff that's come with that, and the extra cash injection and whatever. So do you think it was just kind of a collection of all these things rolled into one, and then the chaos on the final day of the transfer window that kind of made us lose sight of the bigger picture?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I think what I'll say about deadline day is it's become a traditional staple where Everton have done their business quite late. I think the only teams who really do massive amounts of business on deadline day seem to be Everton and Tottenham.
Why is that? Richard? Do you know?
It's kind of got the feel of a sort of the reduced section at a supermarket after 7 o'clock at night. That sort of will get a deal done on a better terms for us if we get it later. If the player wants to leave, he can force through a move at the last minute. Whereas if it's been dragging on all summer, then it tends to be put in the selling club's hands a bit more. I don't know why it is. It seems to be quite a phenomenon for Everton. I don't know whether it is cost associated or if it's just Bill Kenwright's theatrical side coming out and want to have the big splash at the end. But it's not uncommon for Everton to try and get deals done. I mean, I remember in 2012 the deal for, I think it was Ofo, the loan deal was meant to be coming through, and everyone was raving over him, and then it turned out the paperwork hadn't gone through in time. And it's that tendency to leave it late that kind of thing. It frustrates a lot of fans, but it also keeps them enthralled and keeps them tuned into the whole hysteria and the whole spectacle of deadline day. But why Everton do it, I don't know, because you look at some of the deals that Everton have done, some of the smarter deals in recent years. I mean, you look, Kevin Minarsh was probably, I think, 2 weeks before the window closed, in that window where the Ofo deal didn't go through. Stephen Naismith came in on a free transfer, Stephen Pienaar came back. Brian Oviedo was probably one of the later deals in that summer, but it wasn't dead on the on deadline day, really. It was all, I mean, Oviedo would obviously secured his work permit on the day, but the deal was stuck there in advance. So why did they leave it so late? It seems a bit bewildering, but I mean, Tottenham do it as well, and Tottenham have probably got vast resource. They've probably got a bigger pulling power being in London. You've got the Champions League now. They don't really need to leave it to the last minute, but it seems to be a partnership for Daniel Levy as much as it does for Bill Kenwright, or in this case now, Farhad Moshiri.
That's how I do a lot of my shopping, by the way, in the reduced section. Just so you know, big advocate.
Smart, it's a shop.
I live literally. I live about 2 minutes away from the supermarket, so I just nip in, at the end. So I do my shopping in the Everton way. So that's quite good. On to Sissoko then. What happened there, in your opinion, Richard? Obviously, being a freelance journalist in Liverpool, you're into the ground quite a lot. What's your kind of understanding then of what happened with the Sissoko deal?
Well, I mean, I was quite unequivocal when I put stuff out on Twitter, keeping people updated, and a lot of people jumped on it as a sort of derisory strand, because Sky Sports were saying he's on his way to Liverpool, there's a medical booked, and so on and so forth, and they were prepared in the groundwork for him to come, but he wasn't on his way to Liverpool. As I said at the time, it looked like he was going to go to Tottenham. He preferred Tottenham. They were in the box seat, but Everton hadn't given up. Everton was still pushing for it, confident they could sell the vision of what he'd be a part of. I mean, irrespective of whether he was worth it or not, Everton were trying to push for him to come as a statement of intent. Obviously, they missed out on a few players, and it felt like it was a last throw of the dice in terms of getting a big.
Yeah.
But they were pushing, but it looked encouraging for the time, but it still wasn't. I mean, it was still probably about, I'd say, 70-30 Tottenham, and then within about an hour and a half time, it had moved to about 60-40, and then within about half an hour, it had gone back to 70-30, because as Sissoko himself has admitted since, he had no intention of leaving London. He wanted to go to Tottenham, he wanted Champions League football, he wanted basically to move out of the Goldfish Bowl in Newcastle and move into something a bit more attractive for probably the next step, because I can't see him staying at Tottenham. If he does well at Tottenham, I think he'll end up being the next one to go to Real Madrid. I think he'll be the next one through that well-worn path. I don't think he's going to stick around for the long term, and even if he doesn't do well, I think he'll end up moving on somewhere else. We saw it with Clint Dempsey again. I mean, Tottenham have got this tendency to they seem to have this tendency to half-inch a lot of players from the Merseyside clubs who they've targeted. They had a phase of going for Liverpool players. I think this could be the first of many, or, well, the first of a few at least. I mean, you look at the players that moved to North London as a whole. I mean, Perez was scouted by Steve Walsh, ended up at Arsenal on the grounds that Steve Walsh had scouted him, and Sissoko's gone to Tottenham on the basis that Everton thought he was worth a punt. So I don't know if it's going to be a move that pays off for him. I mean, I only remember seeing bits of him last season in the Premier League. The Euro 2016 final obviously caught a lot of people's attentions, but that was a game of tactical brinkmanship largely. It wasn't a classic by any stretch of the imagination. So the fact that he was the man of the match in that game kind of spoke volumes of how poor the game was. And for me, I don't think he's what Everton needs. I think the player Everton needed, they've already got, and Idrissa Gueye. I think he was the player who can drive things on. And I think in that respect, it was a choice between Gueye and Sissoko, where you pick Gueye all day long.
On Idrissa Gueye, then, how impressed have you been with him? Well, I've spoken a lot about him on this show and with the different guests that I've had on, and we've all been extremely impressed with him. I assume then you have as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last player I'd say that's probably hit the ground running in that respect was probably James McCarthy about 3 years ago. I think they're obviously different players. He's a bit more of a tough tackle, but I mean, I was at the Tottenham game on the opening day of the season, and I was just overawed by how competent and how effective he is. I mean, I remember Christian Eriksen barely got a sniff every time he got near it. Gueye was muscling off the ball. I mean, there was some potentially dodgy moments there because they were on the edge of the penalty area, and if a weaker referee might have looked at it and gone, that's a free kick or that's a penalty. But the way he just manages to see off players, his tackling, he looks like he's going to be a player for Everton who, if not for 10 years, I think they'll get a good 5-6 years out of him at least, because he's still relatively young, 24, 25, I think. So he's still at an age where he's not reached his peak, and when he does reach it, it's actually frightening to see what sort of player he'll become. But I think he's probably, I'd probably say ahead of Bash Williams, I'd say he's probably the best bit of business that Everton have done this summer.
Definitely, yeah. I know. I've been. I mean, last week against Stoke as well, he was terrific again. I remember I spoke to a mate of mine who's a Villa fan, and when Everton signed him, he said, I'm not being funny, but I thought that potentially a bigger club, in inverted commas, were potentially going to come in for him because I think he's that good. And I was like, well, we'll wait and see, shall we? And yeah, I've been really impressed with him. And last week against Stoke as well. You know, I thought he was terrific again. So yeah, I'm excited about Jessica Guy, and I think most Evertonians are as well. But sticking on the old transfer window thing, because obviously there's a hell of a lot to talk about, Richard, in there. What do you make to this Farhad Moshiri, Jim White text? Messages that went between the two of them. Now, the last guest that I had on the show, we were kind of joking about this, saying there's absolutely no way Farhad Moshiri sent these messages. Since then, it's come out that he actually did. What are your thoughts on this one, then, mate?
Well, I've got a bit of egg on my face on this one because I actually quite unequivocally said there's no way in hell a man who's worth £1.5 billion would divulge his business secrets to Jim White. I mean, we've seen the clips of Jim White from back in the day. We know what he's all about. I just didn't think it was. I didn't think anyone who's gone about.
Hold on. What pictures are these from back in the day? What pictures have you seen?
There's actually. I found a clip. I think when he was working at STV, he went to a wedding convention and he's dressed up and he looks like Paul Carr, the Steve Coogan character. Basically, Paul Carr with dark hair in a wedding suit, and it's he's actually presenting with some dolly bird on his arm.
Right.
He's actually doing a piece of camera about a wedding fair, and it must be about 30 odd years ago. He doesn't look like he does now. I'll tell you that. He does look like Paul Carr.
You'll have to send me that over after because I need to see that. Sorry, mate. You were saying anyway because I haven't seen that. You were saying though, it's Farhad Moshiri and Jim White then. So there was no way you thought then there was no way that Moshiri like me had sent these messages.
I'd asked around a few people. I said this can't be real, surely. And someone said, well, it is real, just probably not for Farhad Moshiri. There's probably other culprits within the boardroom with Goodison. I mean, I'm sure we can all think of who they are. Who would be onto that? One was Bill Kenwright, the other one was Robert Elston. But obviously there was no foundation. That I was just told it might be the case. But I mean, looking back now, we should have really known something was going on because when I don't know if you remember when Balassi signed, there was these quotes from Farhad Moshiri about how he was anxious to get more business done, but they were only attributed to Sky Sports News. They weren't on the official Everton website. The Echo never had it. None of us received it. None of the national press received it. It was only on Sky Sports News. Now, I wouldn't know the presenting schedule on Sky Sports News that day, but I presume it would have been when Jim White was in the studio, which probably would have made a lot of sense. But at the time, you kind of forget that because a lot seems to happen over time. You don't really think about those sorts of things until you look back after the event. So when Jim White's sitting there on Periscope or whatever it was, telling a Sky Sports intern that Moshiri told him watch this space, your initial reaction is to think he's either blagging or Bill Kenwright's got hold of Moshiri's phone or has told Jim White this is what Moshiri said, and you don't give it much credence really. And then as the window went on, Moshiri's having more quotes attributed to him about how insane the window is again through the medium of Jim White. And you just think, well, he's just blogging again. I mean, how many times has Jim White said he can, managers have told him this and managers have told him that, this player signed for this club, that player signed for that club, and everyone just took it with a pinch of salt. But with Moshiri, we all thought, well, this will be another one of those. But the statement was the most bizarre one. I mean, the statement looked like it had been written by someone at Everton other than Moshiri. I thought it might have been Elston or Kenwright because the way it was worded, that we don't turn our back on our own. I came to join a family. Keeping Jim McCarthy was a priority.
It sounds very Kenwright-esque.
It does, yeah. It sounds. I mean, it sounds up there with kind of his supposedly what Alex Ferguson said about him in his book about that they're stealing our boy spiel about Wayne Rooney. It sounds very, very overblown, very much like something you get in a West End production of Ken Knight. It sounded very, very theatrical, very hyperbolic, and.
What a manager! There's another one.
Oh yeah, what a manager! I mean, that was one of our personal favourites. That one, what a manager indeed. But
you gotta love him, mate. Well, yeah. Some don't, but it does make you laugh.
Yeah, well, he's come up with a few off record as well, which were quite funny. I mean, I've probably told it before. It was when Martinez unveiled. He actually said, I just said, well, why did no one else take a go on him? Why did it take for Everton after Villa came in, after Liverpool came in? We could have had the talk. And Kenwright did that thing he does, that I used to sit in the boys' pen thing, where he went, maybe he didn't want them. And I thought, so Roberto Martinez didn't want to go to Aston Villa, and he didn't want to go to Liverpool. Okay, all right. But yeah, it did seem like something Kenwright would write. And then when it, you do a bit more digging, you contact the club, you say to them, is there any truth to this? There was a bit of a delayed response. And then it all comes out that, yeah, it is true. And you just think he's been incredibly naive either, or he's divulged something in confidence. And then Jim White kind of used it to his advantage to say, you're going to have to try and get yourself out of a hole here.
Yeah, you're a journalist, though. I mean, Jim White wouldn't use that unless he knew that he could, right?
Yeah, well,
because potentially, I mean, if Fahad Moshiri said that to him within confidence, and then he just went on to Sky Sports News and said it. Bearing in mind that he'd already relayed a message from him previously, as you've already pointed out, and he wasn't supposed to relay the final message, then that would ruin his relationship completely. So he's not going to do that, right?
No, but I mean, the thing about it is that if there was any suspicion about this any of the Moshiri statements to Jim White and to Sky Sports, Everton would have been on that like flies round dung. They would have said, this is not true. It's disgraceful that Sky Sports News have attributed this to our biggest shareholder, because I've been told you can't say majority shareholder because it's not 51%, it's only 49% odd. So you can't attribute this to one of our board members, our main investor essentially. They would have refuted that, but there was no denials, there was no counterclaim, there was nothing. So we probably should have known then that there was some sort of link, but it just seemed very strange that Moshiri, who's a man who doesn't speak openly. I mean, you look at the, I think it was 369 words in the Everton programme against Chelsea. That was his statement of intent, and then came right through him in front of the cameras after the game for Everton TV, and he looked very uncomfortable.
Yeah,
he was very short on his words. He was like, what can I say? I'm going to give them everything I have. It was all very the right sentiment, but he seemed almost embarrassed by it. And then you see the clips doing the rounds on social media after the or midway through the Norwich game where they're in the lounge and Ken Wright's telling everyone he's made my dream come true, he'll make yours come true, and people screaming we want Mourinho at him, and he just seems to kind of be quite what's the word? Quite embarrassed by it all. Obviously he's privileged to be in position as he knows that, but he just feels a bit uncomfortable with the spotlight. He's not like the owners at Liverpool. He's not like the owners at Man United. He's not like the owners at, not the owner at Chelsea, but the people around him. He's not grandstanding. So
yeah.
the fact that he's using an unofficial channel, and by unofficial I mean that it's not a club affiliate. It's not Everton TV. It's not the website. He's not leaning on the good relationship the club have with the Echo or with the national journalists. The fact that he's leaning on Sky Sports News, it all had a very surreal feel to it, and I don't know if it was misguided or if he goes back a long way with Jim White or what, but it just seemed very strange in the statement as well. I mean, it wasn't one that looked like it had just been hastily prepared, even though it was, it was shared on an iPhone note. It wasn't something that had been, it wasn't something that just went, well, we did our best, we'll move on. It was quite detailed, and the James McCarthy thing was bizarre. I mean, I know there's been a shift in perception of McCarthy since Roberto Martinez has left, but I don't think saying you want to keep James McCarthy is probably a priority. I think you look at the players who come in, Gareth Barry being just brilliant as he's been over the past few weeks, and towards the end of last season, he was player of the year for a reason, and he's carried that on. Idrissa Gueye started well. McCarthy, I don't think keeping him was a priority over other players. I don't think you'd actually sacrifice Romelu Lukaku, yeah. John Stones, if he'd stayed, yeah, you would. You'd do everything to keep hold of him. But I don't think McCarthy is as invaluable as they make out, and I think it was a strange statement to make. Definitely,
yeah. The whole thing was quite bizarre. Another thing that people may have thought was a little bit bizarre was this payoff to Martinez this week that's come out. Apparently, the club have given him £10 million, obviously, for sacking him. We've all heard of these kind of grotesque figures that have been handed to managers after they've failed fundamentally to pay off the rest of their contract. Did you realise the figure was going to be that high? Was this a bit of a surprise to you? And what are your general thoughts on this payout to Martinez then, Richard?
Well, I mean, upward variation seems to be a common theme in football. I mean, I think you look how many times Rafael Benitez has done it. He's gone from bombing at Liverpool to Inter Milan, bombs at Inter Milan, goes to Chelsea, does okay at Chelsea, goes to Napoli, doesn't do much in Napoli, gets the top job at Real Madrid. And you do wonder. And then Martinez is probably, I'd say Martinez is probably more in that mould. Irrespective of winning the FA Cup, he got relegated, got a job at Everton. He took Everton from a team who was doing quite well in probably the top half of the Premier League. He had one good season, and he had two. And I think you've got to attribute the last game of the season aside to him. A team that finished in 11th on two successive occasions. So And then he's walked into the Belgium job, which seems just absolutely bewildering. You would never have put him down for that. I mean, I think when that one happened, I think we were all a bit stunned. I don't think anyone expected that, especially given his fraught relationship with Kevin Morales and supposedly Romelu Lukaku wasn't
Yeah,
very.
you've met the guy on numerous occasions, I assume, from in the press box and whatever. Is it something about him with Roberto that he, for all the we all have a laugh about some of the things that he says, phenomenal, and all those those crazy statements after when we've lost games heavily and whatever. But is there something about him where he's just so warm and seems so genuine that you can imagine that chairman and heads of football associations just go, this guy's the man. Like, I think he can do it. Let's give him a job. Is there something about him?
I think he's quite personable. I can't deny that. I mean, he's the type of person who could basically rob you at gunpoint and he'd do it with a smile. He's very kind of.
You got to watch out for them ones.
Yeah, I've had a few of them in my time. Yeah, he does seem to be. And similar, I think probably he's a bit more genial than. I mean, if you remember the time when this tiki-taka philosophy was chased by a lot of clubs, I mean, we saw it on Merseyside on both sides, and they went for the forward-thinking, young, dynamic managers, and Martinez was considered to be the perfect fit for both Liverpool and Everton. Obviously, Liverpool went with their own choice, which I don't think worked for them, and Martinez didn't work for Everton really. In the grander scheme, I mean, he did well in the first season, and there were upsides as well. I think in terms of the Europa League campaign, but you look at that being offset by a poor. I mean, we were looking at, I think it was March last year. It was actually looking possible that Everton could be dragged into a relegation fight, and if they hadn't won against Newcastle, that would probably continue that narrative worryingly. But I think he is probably quite personal and probably quite, I mean, you look at the way Ken Wright talks about, I mean, what a manager, that was the stock phrase after the Chelsea game, in which I think, one swallow doesn't make it summer. I think beating the Chelsea team who were, the season was over anyway, more or less. They were out of Europe. The title defence had fallen by, I think, late October, early November. There wasn't much for them to fight for. This was like the last throw of the dice, and they just couldn't handle, the power of Goodison. Lukaku, who was on absolute fire. I mean, coincidentally, hasn't done much since for the club, but that was probably the peak of the season for Everton. But to come out and say what a manager shows how infatuated Ken Wright was, and he does. Ken Wright's one of these chairmen who he doesn't fall in love much, but when he does, he falls hard. I mean, David Moyes, he was practically on the verge of tears when Moyes was leaving. He doesn't do the cold hard sentiment that other clubs do. He doesn't do an Abramovich where he goes, right, well, we're out of Europe, title defence is gone, you're out the door, Mourinho. Doesn't go, it's not like United where it's like, I mean, I think Moyes got too much time at United, but I think Ken Wright would have let it go on for another year or 2 years, that sort of.
Yeah, he's a romantic, he would.
To be honest, after the end of the 2014-15 season, when I think the lap of honour against Tottenham, and Martinez was doing the lap of honour, and I think he was expecting some sort of adulation for keeping Everton up. There was just indifference. He came to the Glad Street and there was, a few people smattering applause, but that was it. There was no real. It wasn't like the first season where he went around the ground and everyone was singing about the School of Science on his way back, and everyone went with it. And I think, you look at the way the atmosphere turned at Goodison in the final few weeks and months of the season. You probably even go back to probably December when Tim Howard's giving it back to the Glad Street, and there's just just a very nasty atmosphere, and Evertonians don't expect the earth. They want to be successful. They want to do well. As long as you see a team that's going to actually give it a go, then they will actually, give people the time. I think Koeman will get the time if he shows the will and he shows, he cuts through the bullshit. I think he will be given the time and the support from the fans. I don't think it'll turn overnight. I think if it deteriorates, it'll be because it's happened over a sustained period. So I think Martinez does disarm people with his charm, but it doesn't make up for the fact that he isn't really, I'd say, a big time manager. He's been in the Premier League. He's had a few wins here and there. The FA Cup win at Goodison in 2030 was probably his audition. I think that was the day when everyone thought Moyes, this is it for Moyes, and I don't think anyone thought Martinez was the answer. But obviously, Bill Kenwright saw otherwise, and I think on those grounds, I think he does disarm people. But 10 million, we knew it was the figure he was seeking. I'm surprised that Everton have paid it, even that with the vast resource. I just think paying off 10 million for upwardly failing is quite bizarre. Really. You wouldn't have had it in it's the sort of thing that would have been dragged out in the court over months and even years, possibly. I mean, I don't think there's anything in the closet of Goodson that Martinez could blow the doors open on. I don't think he could turn around and say, oh well, they had to loan money, but we knew that.
Yeah, yeah,
Ground's falling apart, but we knew that.
yeah.
Ken Wright basically had Phil Green on board behind the scenes. Well, that's the worst kept secret in Merseyside. Stuff anything Martinez could have thrown at Everton could have thrown 10 times back. So why are we so happy to do it? I think it comes across as probably Ken Wright. You got to remember, Ken Wright was the person who actually brokered the deal. Gave him a new, I think it was 4 or 5 year contract. I think it was a 4-year contract, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. After the first season, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why a lot of clubs do that with the manager after one good season. I mean, I think Liverpool have done it quite a lot.
Klopp, yeah, they have, yeah.
You're rewarding someone for doing all right at the job. I mean, you look at Ferguson. Ferguson was going out on his ear in 1990 if he hadn't won that FA Cup. He wasn't rewarded after having 1 year of getting him to third and being told, well, here's a 10-year contract. Knock yourself out. So it just shows you about the changing culture in football. This fear of losing someone after one good season.
Yeah, the only one I can understand it with this season is Ranieri. Ranieri obviously has been given another bumper contract because he's won the league with Leicester. I mean, if anybody deserves one, it's probably him. Do you know what I mean? But no, I get what you're saying.
Sorry, I think probably Koeman and Rose Southampton were trying to tie him down to a longer term deal, and he just said, "Well, I've got 1 more year to run. Let's see what happens after this." I think it was 2 years. Either way, it was a very short time for him, and he was saying, "I don't want to commit further," because he's got a short term vision on his managerial career. I don't really expect him to be at Everton for a decade. I can't see him being one of those managers, but what he'll do is he'll leave a mark, and it'll be hopefully a good mark. But I think he was, and the one who probably was, they were fearful of someone coming in and taking him away from them, so they were trying to tie him down after some good, they reached Europe this last season. So I can understand why clubs are anxious to do that, but I just think the idea of, you had one good season, so just to save Man United or Arsenal or Chelsea coming in for you, we're going to give you a 5-year deal, it kind of gets managers complacent. So why Everton I can understand why they give them the deal at the time, because obviously the parameters weren't where they are now. Everton are probably financially stronger to compete with clubs despite the absence of European football than they were then. So there was an obvious fear, but I mean, 10 million is insane because he still had 2 years to run. I think his contract was 2018. So what you're saying is 5 million a year for those remaining 2 years. I mean, Koeman's on 6 million a year. That's a real game changer. And I wonder if that's affected it as well. I wonder if the fact that they're saying, well, you're paying the new guy 6 million, so 5 million per year isn't actually a bad deal in comparison.
Yeah, potentially. What we'll do is we've been chatting now for almost half an hour, Richard. That's gone quick. Really enjoyed that. We'll knock this video off here, and then we'll talk about Sunderland in another video just to split it up a little bit. So I'll speak to you in a second, Richard. And for those of you who are watching, if you want to see what me and Richard have to say about Sunderland on Monday night, then obviously keep posted for the coming video on that.